Welcome back to Accessible Gourmet. Today we're making chorizo stuffed squid over butter beans. To start this dish, we need 3 cloves of garlic that we're just going to give a nice little choppity chop up into a fine mince. Once we have that minced up, we're going to transfer over to a small bowl while we chop up 1 large yellow onion into a small dice. This can go into the same bowl as our garlic since it's going in the pan at the same time, and it's one less dish we're going to have to clean at the end of our cooking process. We also need 3/4 of a cup of halved either cherry or grape tomatoes, whatever you have on hand, and just eyeball this measurement. It doesn't have to be exactly 3/4 of a cup. If you have a little less or a little more, it's perfectly fine. We also need 1½ cups of chopped tomatoes, so I have these gorgeous tomatoes on the vine that I'm just going to cut in half, but I am going to de-seed these and decore them because sometimes the core of these vine tomatoes are grainy, and we don't want that texture in our final product, so just pull out that core and any of the seeds that are in our tomato. Now we're going to cut these into strips and then chop them into a small dice and set them aside in a bowl. Next up, we need 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. This is going to go in at the end of our cooking process, but it's nice to have everything prepped and ready so we're not scrambling. So give this a nice little choppity chop. We're going to set this aside until we're ready to add it to our dish. Now I have 6 links of chorizo sausage. I'm just removing that outer casing since we don't need it. So either take a knife or some kitchen shears, run it up the middle of our sausage and start gently pulling off that casing, and then we're going to crumble the chorizo meat into a separate bowl. I also found this little tiny tube that I can't stuff, so I'm going to add that to our filling. You could definitely add shrimp or rice, it's completely up to you, but I didn't want this little guy to go to waste, so I'm just cutting it into strips and then into cubes, and I'm going to mix this thoroughly in with our chorizo. Now I have 5 medium squid tubes that we're just going to start filling with our chorizo and squid mixture. Just make sure to pack that in nicely and firmly, but not too much because we don't want these to explode when we go to cook them. But leave 1/8 of an inch at the top just so we can thread a toothpick through to close that opening so nothing falls out while we cook these. Now we are ready to move over to our stovetop. Over medium heat in a large saucepan, add 1/4 cup of olive oil and gently place in all of your squid. We're just going to give this a light little browning. We don't want a hard sear on this. We just want to get a little bit of color, which should take about 5 minutes per side. When you go to flip your squid, if your squid doesn't want to move, give it a couple more seconds. It'll release from the pan when it's ready. Don't forget to brown the sides as well. Now we're going to remove the squid, set it on a plate, and we're going to cook this thoroughly later. But for now, we just need to remove them from the pan. And in the same pan, we're going to add all of our onions and garlic. We're going to saute this and let this cook for about 5 minutes, just until the onion starts to turn translucent and you can start to smell that gorgeous garlic. There's a lot of fond on the bottom of this pan, but we're going to take care of that in the next step. I've added a sprig of fresh thyme, as well as 1 cup of dry white wine. While we're mixing this in and letting this simmer for 5 minutes, be sure to scrape up the bottom because we want all of that flavor in our dish. After 5 minutes, we're going to add in our diced tomato, give this a quick little stir, then add in our cherry or our grape tomatoes, as well as 1/2 cup of water. We're going to let this saute for about a minute, add a little salt and a little bit of pepper. And we're going to bring this up to a boil and then lower it to a simmer. I'm giving this another taste. I'm constantly tasting throughout my cooking just because I need to know if I need more salt or more pepper, because no one likes under-seasoned or over-seasoned food, so it's always good to check. Now that our broth has simmered and been lowered to a low heat, we're adding back in all of our squid as well as any of the juices that have collected on the plate. We don't want any of that flavor to go to waste. Now we're going to cover this and let this simmer on low for 1 hour. After an hour, we're going to remove the lid and remove our squid. We're going to let this cool down a little bit because we're going to cut it for plating. Now into our pan, I'm adding 2 14-ounce cans of butter beans as well as our parsley. And we just want to cook this until the butter beans heat through. We can take out our thyme stem now and discard that. And we're going to check the seasoning one last time and add any more salt and pepper if it needs it. While the beans are heating through, we are going to go ahead and cut up our squid. So just take out that toothpick and cut your squid into 1/2-inch rings. The way this knife is going through the squid lets me know that the squid is not rubbery, so I'm super excited that it's not overcooked. Now for plating, we're going to lay down a layer of our butter beans and tomato wine sauce. This is a rustic dish, so you don't have to be super precious when you go to plate this. It should feel homey and warm and inviting. On top of the butter beans, we're going to lay our squid down in whatever arrangement you like, whatever looks most beautiful to you. You could also keep your squid whole, but I just like it cut up into these rings. You can also serve these as an appetizer on toothpicks. Now we're going to layer over a little bit more of that gorgeous tomato wine broth as well as a few of those butter beans over the top of the squid. And I like to add a little sprig of parsley just because that green pop of color just makes this dish so inviting. Okay, now let's give this a taste. The wine is subtle in the sauce. The tomatoes are vibrant and tart. The butter beans are smooth and creamy and a great starch addition to this dish. Now let's move on to the squid and chorizo. You get a hint of the ocean from the squid and a spicy hit from the chorizo. It's a really amazing combination, these two together. I think squid should always be eaten with chorizo, in my humble opinion. And there it is, chorizo stuffed squid over butter beans. I had a lot of fun making this dish, and I hope you guys try it out as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you loved it, subscribe and click the notification bell because I put out new videos every Thursday. Until next time, happy cooking.